No, I don't think there's any reason not to try carnivore. I think there's many reasons to try carnivore. I think that's going to be healthiest for her, regardless of her situation, just because she's human. And, meat is still the best thing for lions, regardless of their medical situation. Generally, it's even better for lions that have medical conditions because you obviously don't want to be feeding them things that they're not designed for, their body has more trouble with when they're in times of stress. And cancer is certainly one of those times. Okay, hello. Thank you everyone for joining. Today's the live for November 16th in America, 17th in Australia. So thanks everyone for joining on. Have about an hour and a half today. And so hopefully we can get to a lot of your questions. And then I gotta go. We'll start off with one that sort of came in earlier. So, we announced this a while ago, so people have been able to put in chats and things like that. So this is a super chat that actually came in much earlier, so even yesterday. So this is from Marius Patru. Thank you very much for the super chat. He says, on a 4-month carnivore diet with great results. That's good. Recent blood tests, high cholesterol, HDL 68, LDL 271, hypertension of 160 over 110 unmedicated, 130 over 70 on X-Forge. Cardiologist suggests cholesterol meds. Your advice? Well, the cholesterol medications, I mean, that's something that you're going to have to sort of figure out with your doctor. But I would look at different resources such as Dr. Asima Holtra's book, A Statin-Free Life. And he goes through the statistics and the data from the drug companies talking about how much of an effect this has on people's lives. So for instance, according to the drug companies, their own studies, this is the best that it's ever going to get, that if you have had a heart attack and you go on statins for at least 5 years and you stay on it long term, that you will extend your life by 5 days on average. 5 days on average. Okay, so that's an improvement, isn't it? So some people will gain an improvement. Is it a marked improvement? Not necessarily. But if you've had a heart attack and you stay on it long term, then you might see this 5-day benefit on average. If you have not had a heart attack, you really don't get any extension in life, maybe up to a couple days at most. But that's not something that would really wow a lot of people. And so obviously those aren't the statistics that they put out there. They say different sorts of things like, oh, this reduces your risk by 46% or whatever it is. And that's relative risk. It's not actual the total risk. So it's a small percentage of people, and that drops it very slightly in that percentage of people. But like the total risk reduction is like less than 1%, according to the data that we have currently. So is that something that's going to benefit you? I don't know. That could be something that your doctor might think is beneficial to you. However, we need to also think about what statins do, how they lower cholesterol, and what that mechanism is. They stop your body from making large buoyant LDL molecules. So even if you have the small dense LDL molecules, that's not going to help with that. It's going to stop you from making the large buoyant LDL molecules, which are beneficial. And these are the ones your body makes, and they make them on purpose because you need them. And so this stops your body and your brain from making these. And I think that can be detrimental in many cases. So you have to sort of wonder about that. Your HDL is great. You didn't say your triglycerides, but they're probably good too. That's a marker of metabolic health. I don't think that we can really look at cholesterol as a clear marker of heart disease, because it's not a very strong marker of heart disease. Even the small dense LDL molecules being high, it only increases your risk by about 1.7 times. Okay, so that's an increased risk. But metabolic syndrome increases it by 6 times, diabetes by 10 times. And the same things that you would do to address metabolic syndrome and diabetes, namely high-fat carnivore diet with no carbohydrates, ketogenic diets have been proven to reverse type 2 diabetes. And I've seen this in person many, many, many times. Doing that will improve your SDLDL as well. You'll have less of that. You'll have more of the large buoyant ones. And as LDL was really never a marker of heart disease in the first place, it was a scapegoat by the sugar companies. That's a fact. We have that on record from the sugar companies that they lied and misled people for decades, still doing it probably. Although that machine is just moving now, and now the drug companies are into it, and they sell statins, and it's the highest grossing drug that they've ever put on the market, I believe. They're not going to stop pushing this angle anytime soon. They're not going to say, oh, hey, look, we got it wrong. You never needed statins in the first place. So we'll just dump our best selling drug ever and try something else. They will never do that. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to never do that. And even if it's they're selling a product that doesn't help anybody or maybe even hurts people, they're going to be financially incentivized to keep pushing it. And I believe that's where we are now. And so I personally don't think that we need to address cholesterol for heart disease. I don't think that's a thing, because it was never a thing. It was a scapegoat. And so if we know that this was all based on a false premise, why are we still worried about it? I don't think we need to be. I don't think we should be. I'm personally not. If your HDL is high and your triglycerides are low, you're metabolically healthy. That's the only thing. That's the only thing I care about when I look at my own cholesterol. And LDL and total cholesterol, these have both been associated in large studies with longevity, right? And these are associative studies, but every study that came out negative against LDL and cholesterol were all associative studies too. And they were doctored and forged and fraudulent, most of these things, right? So, it's not something that I worry about anyway, but you can look at my video called The Truth About Cholesterol and Heart Disease. I think that goes into a lot of the arguments and the studies and the data that show that this isn't really something that we should worry about the way that they're making us. And then my interview with Dr. Asim Malhotra, where he talks about statins and things like that, and how they're really not necessarily all that cracked up. Jesus, what is that saying? I'm so tongue tied today. It's not what they said it was. So, that's what I would do. I would take a look at that and then make a personal decision, because of course, at the end of the day, everyone has their individual circumstances. There are people that gain 5 days out of this on average. So people are going to gain a little more than that, but it's not a great recovery. Maybe some people are going to be helped more than others, but why is that? It's probably not because the cholesterol is being lowered. It's more likely to do with the fact that have a small anti-inflammatory effect, like an aspirin. But an aspirin has a better anti-inflammatory effect, which is why people take aspirin, and it can help in a number of ways. So those are sort of my thoughts on that, but I would definitely look into it more so that you can make an informed decision on your health and not just blindly go into one thing or the other. As far as hypertension, stay on your medication until such time that you can come off your medication. Most people will reduce the amount of blood pressure medications that they're on. Most will, and a lot of those people will actually come off completely. Some won't. There are other causes of high blood pressure apart from insulin resistance and high insulin levels. So, just remember that. And sometimes you need to investigate for that. But I would at least stay on your medication until such times that lowers down and that you don't need or want to be on it, because obviously you can get blood pressure that's too low, and that's dangerous as well. So good luck with that. So a question from Lara Leon. Please, can we chat about my 14-year-old daughter, Lyme and grand mal seizures? Sure, we definitely can. I mean, a lot of people have improved their Lyme disease with a carnivore diet. And that has been really nice to see. People have had chronic Lyme disease for years and years. I just had a lady, Angela, on my podcast, and she had Lyme for 30 years. It was undiagnosed for a long time, and then became diagnosed, and she had a lot of problems from that, and was able to reverse that, or at least treat it and significantly improve it with a carnivore diet, and still in the process of that. And then grand mal seizures, we have 100 years of evidence on ketogenic diets. Carnivore diet is a ketogenic diet. We should be anyway, and that has been shown to improve outcomes with seizures, especially in pediatric populations. So I think that's something that's very important to consider and to include in any epilepsy treatment model. It's not good enough to just throw drugs at it. I mean, that might fix the problem, or not fix the problem, but it might address the problem and stop the seizures from happening. But if you can address this without medication, if you can address this with your just dietary interventions that are going to improve for health in other ways as well, as you're going to be in ketosis, so her brain's going to get more ketones and her brain is going to be able to grow and develop better. So I mean, that's a benefit. And something is happening with our brain chemistry, something is happening with the energy dynamics in our brain when in ketosis, that we don't have seizures at nearly the rate that we do otherwise for most people. So that's something that I think you start with. And if that's not enough, then you move on to adding in pharmaceuticals. You don't just start with pharmaceuticals. You start with diet, and then you move to pharmaceuticals if you have to. Most people, well, a lot of people, I should say, will improve on a ketogenic diet. This is in the literature for literally 100 years. And I've seen people improve more on a carnivore diet because you're removing even more, toxins and things like that can act on your brain as well and act negatively. So I think that would be definitely something to attempt and to try with your daughter. Low carb, low drama. I had a question. A quick big thank you to Dr. Chaffee. We are currently traveling overseas, donning plant-free MD cap and sharing info on this dangerously healthy way of eating called ketogenic carnivore diet. Cheers. Oh, well, thank you very much. That's really nice. I hope you like the hats. I think they're funny. I think all of them are hilarious. I sort of made the shirts because I thought I'd want, especially like the killer broccoli one, the plants are trying to kill you one. I just think that's hilarious. And it's just this murderous broccoli. I don't know. It cracks me up, and that's why we made it. But well, thank you, and I hope that you're doing well with it. So Donna J has a super chat. Thank you very much for that. Let me just adjust that there. Do your patients with CFS-ME get better? 30 plus years with it. Hashimoto's and 3 months mostly meat salt, not doing great. Some of the carnivore community says CSF-ME people need carbs too. Is this true? No, I don't think that's true. I don't think anyone needs carbs. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. And if there's no essential carbohydrates, then you don't need them in any of these sorts of things. So I'm assuming that CFS is chronic fatigue syndrome, but I'm sort of trying to wonder what ME is. Could be a lot of things. Sometimes it's best to just write out everything because there's so many acronyms for different sorts of things. And so if you haven't come across them, because I'm not in every field of medicine, so I don't know all of them. I'm assuming that CFS is chronic fatigue syndrome. I'm not 100% sure on what ME is. So maybe put that in the chat. We'll try to see that. But chronic fatigue syndrome, a lot of people have improved. We don't know exactly what the hell causes chronic fatigue syndrome. So it's hard to say exactly what's going on there. Hashimoto's definitely improves as well, but that takes time. And it's one of those things that you really need to be as strict red meat and water as possible. All autoimmune issues react best to a strict red meat and water diet. And so the closer you are to that, the better you're going to do. So you're sort of on a mostly meat and salt. That's good. That's going to be better. You're going to get more nutrients and more things that your body needs and wants, and that's great. You're going to be excluding a lot of other things your body doesn't want, your body's reacting to, your body's making antibodies to, potentially, and that you are having a problem with. That's all great, but you can still react to other things. And so I would really try to get rid of everything. Just go on just a red meat and water diet only. People call it like a PKD diet, like the paleo ketogenic diet. What our ancestors were eating 50,000 years ago. I'm fully on board with that. That's Sophia Clemens' terminology, PKD diet. I argued the same thing, just in a different name. We should be eating what we were eating 50,000 years ago during the ice ages. Eat that, eat very high quality red meat and some organs and nothing else. And if you do that, your body's going to be best able to deal with anything you're facing. Hashimoto's can take a long time, and you get very tired from Hashimoto's because it attacks your thyroid and you produce less thyroid hormone. So obviously you need to be on replacement thyroid hormone potentially if your levels are such that's required. If you've had a diagnosis of Hashimoto's, then you almost certainly do have depressed function of your thyroid. So I would look into that if you're not on it already, and make sure you're on the right dose. Most doctors will sort of look at this and just be like, oh yeah, you're within sort of the range, so that's fine, but you still feel like garbage. The thing is, you need tighter control than that, because those reference ranges are the reference ranges for the entire community, most of whom are sick, most of whom have a metabolic disease, most of whom are overweight or obese. Why are we judging ourselves against people that are sick and unwell and potentially elderly and overweight? That's not who you want to compare yourself to. You want to compare yourself to people that are in the throes of youth and healthy. They don't have health issues. They don't have metabolic disease. They don't suffer from obesity or weight issues. So that's what you want to compare yourself to. And when you do that, that's a very different range than we would normally see. So like TSH in most areas and most places use the same. Can't remember the units, but anyway, similar units like in Europe and America and Australia. Most will say going up to 4.5 in your TSH is fine, and that's in the normal range because that's normal for the population. But anything above 2 actually doubles your risk of thyroid cancer. Okay, so that's not good. Now, double a small number is still a small number. Not a lot of people get thyroid cancer, but this is still showing you that your body's overstimulating your thyroid, saying, hey, we need more of this. And also you're increasing your risk. So you don't want that. A better range is 0.3 to 1.5. And that's what we see in people that are in their 20s and have no health issues. And so that's what you really want to aim for. So you want to have a better control over that. You want to have, and then, free TSH and free T4 and reverse T3, all these things come into it. So you want to go to a doctor or clinician that understands that and understands that there are different reference ranges for actual health, as opposed to just the broad reference ranges from the lab, because those are less helpful. And then just stick with it. You've only been doing it a couple months. Hashimoto's can take a long time to heal if you're doing it pure red meat and water. And if you're not quite doing that, it's going to take a lot longer, and you're not going to get the same results and improvement. So I would really try to just eat fatty red meat and water. Get a lot of fat, like 1 gram to 2 grams of fat per 1 gram of protein. So that means about 65% of the meat should be lean, 35% should be the fat tissue. So like if you get ground beef or mince, that'd be 65, 35, 65 lean, 35 fat. That's about 2 to 1 grams of fat to 1 gram of protein. That's what I would go for. That's where people get the best results, is with that. But even when they're doing that, it can take over a year or more before they get to a point of stability. Now, is that complete resolution, or is that to a point that their antibodies are down basically to nothing and their thyroid is functioning as best as it can? Some people get permanent damage and their thyroid never works properly again. They have to be on some sort of thyroid supplementation, but most people will improve dramatically, and they'll come way down on their thyroid hormone demand. And that's the point. It's not letting it get worse and and keeping it stable and improving it as much as you can. Amberly, question. Good morning, Dr. Chaffee. Carnivore 3 years, recently diagnosed with diverticulitis. Can't understand why. Previous SAD diet, genetics, brother eats SAD and got it same age as me. Coincidence? Maybe. Thank you. Well, look, diverticulitis, just like heart disease, just like a lot of things, they take decades and decades and decades to build up. So, it's taught in medical school, at least when I was going through, that at 50 years old, 50% of the population will have diverticulosis, which then can become infected and become diverticulitis. And then what your age is after that is your percentage risk of having diverticulosis. So it's very common. You 80, you have an 80% chance of having it. 100, it's 100%. Everyone who's 100 has it. I don't know if that's true, but that's what's taught, is that's your percent likelihood risk of having this. So it's very common. It does come from decades and decades and decades of eating the wrong thing, I believe. And then you have it, and you have diverticulosis, and then that can become infected, and that becomes diverticulitis. And so that's what you have now, or that's what you're describing now, unless you mean diverticulosis and you don't have an infection. But if you have an infection, then that's something that's superimposed on something that's been there for a long time and been developing for decades. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. The thing that we do when someone has an acute flare-up of diverticulitis is we put them on a low residue diet, and we rest the bowel, aka no fiber. And so don't eat things that you're going to have to pass, and you're upsetting this area, right? So that's what you're doing. You're already on that, and so you're on a good treatment. You may need antibiotics. You may need some more help because it is a serious issue, but I don't, certainly not caused by a carnivore diet. There's studies with over 2,000 people, and they found there's no connection between meat, fat, constipation, and developing diverticulosis. The only connections that they found were increased fiber, increased bowel motion, so more than 15 a week, which is just slightly more than 2 a day. And so there's not even an association with meat, fat, and constipation, and developing diverticulosis, at least in that study. So I would, I wouldn't be concerned from that point of view. I think if anything, you're improving your situation. You're going to have a low residue diet all the time. You're not going to have all these seeds and nuts and fibers going to get stuck in there and irritate and upset the diverticulae, and they can get those infected. You're still at risk of getting those things infected, but it's I would bet that it's much lower. I don't think we have numbers on this on different diets, but I would bet that it's much lower because you have this low residue diet already. So you're already resting the bowel. You're already taking it easy. You're just not giving your body more and more and more chances to damage these diverticulae and cause a problem and get an infection. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying this replay of my YouTube Live. If you'd like to catch a live version and ask your own questions, please go to the next scheduled one, usually every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. All right, see you then, and please enjoy the rest of the Q&A. Okay, so question: rapid heartbeat on a carnivore diet and waking up at 3 a.m. Is this common? Well, it's not unheard of. It's not exactly common. It's not like most people get it, but it does happen. Rapid heartbeat is different than a strong, aggressive heartbeat. So not aggressive is probably the wrong word, but sometimes you get this big beat. It's just this dum, dum, dum. You go, oh my God, I'm having palpitations. Because there's this very strong heartbeat. Well, your heart preferentially runs on ketones. That's its primary fuel. So it's basically like driving a NASCAR, Formula One car on diesel, and it's just like, well, that's not working well. And then you get to actually right fuel, and all of a sudden it's tearing off down the park. So that's sort of what I think about. That's how I think about it with our heart and ketones. So when you go on a ketogenic, and people will notice this, as soon as they eat carbohydrates, that slows right down. Okay, is that a good thing though? I would say no. I'd say you want your heart running on ketones and your brain running on ketones, because that's what they're supposed to be running on. If they can alternatively run on glucose, but that's not their preference. And I've gone into that in other ways, in other talks, going into why that I would say that's their preference, because they, even when they have glucose and ketones available, they don't take in the glucose. They only use the ketones, or primarily use the ketones. So that shows a preference. That's your heart and your brain. So you can get strong beats. Now, if you're getting rapid too fast, that could be just your heart's just, now it's gone on the rocket fuel and it's really happy about that. Or it could be something else underlying. So if you're getting a rhythm that's excuse me, if you're getting a beat that's over 100 beats per minute, or you're having an irregular pattern to the rhythm, that's something you need to get an ECG, EKG on, depending on the different parts of the world. I don't know why they say it's EKG or ECG. Just keep it the same, guys. But anyway, in America, it's EKG. Elsewhere, it's ECG largely. And you should get that checked out. Just make sure you don't have something underlying. This isn't going to like cause an arrhythmia. You can get your electrolytes checked, you can get your potassium checked, you can get these other things checked just to make sure. But I've really never seen that, someone getting their potassium so low that it causes an arrhythmia. But you could have something underlying it. This shouldn't, eating what you're biologically designed to eat should not cause dysfunction at all, right? If anything, it should be undoing a lot of dysfunction. Waking up at 3 a.m. can be a lot of reasons for that. You want to optimize your sleep state. You want to optimize everything around that. And and then use a sleep mask. Make sure there's no lights in the room, because even just your phone charging, just a little blue light, phone charging, that can be enough to disturb your sleep. So using a sleep mask, making sure things are very dark, turning off lights an hour before you want to go to sleep, getting morning light, all these things set you up to sleep well. A lot of people will find that they don't need nearly as much sleep, and so something wakes them up, and all of a sudden they're just wide awake because they got really restful sleep. And some people are super lucky, and they just don't need all that much sleep. But I would just optimize your sleep experience in all these different sorts of ways, just to make sure that you're not getting something that can disturb you and wake you up, and things like that. But some people do have a bit of sleep disturbance. Most people actually improve their sleep. I definitely improved my sleep, and so that's what a lot of people do. So I would just keep going with it. I would just get it tracing of the heart, just to make sure that that's okay, and then just try to fix the sleep things, like sleep mask, things like that, and hopefully that'll get better. Smalley Pirate, thank you for the super chat. You say we shouldn't drink a lot of milk, yet we find in most cultures it was the norm to eat a lot of meat and milk. How do we balance both of these? Well, it's going back how far. I mean, that's what you have to ask yourself. We haven't been drinking milk all that long, sort of 10, 20,000 years, something like, maybe a bit more. But either way, it's not it's not 800,000 years. It's not 2 million years like we have been eating meat. And I think that a lot of, since the megafauna died out and we didn't have this super rich, high fat meat available, we sort of had to find other ways of getting more fat, more nutrients. There is someone who I believe is, incorrect in a lot of ways, but it sounds like he's just intentionally misleading people. Someone who the vegans will bring on all the time, talking about, these hunter gatherers all this time. They didn't actually eat that way. It's like, he is literally the only person saying that, and he's comparing things to the Hadza. Oh, look at the Hadza. They get all this from plants and honey and things like that. Yeah, because they were taking off their traditional land and they can't hunt big animals anymore, so they're just doing what they can to survive. You can't compare the Hadza with our ancestors who were living in the ice ages hunting mammoths. I mean, that's stupid. And so I don't believe this guy is stupid. So that sounds like that's intentional. He's intentionally trying to mislead people. And he said, oh, well, you this whole thing about fat, I mean, that's ridiculous. Even if we were eating meat, we weren't eating a bunch of fat, because wild animals are so lean. They don't have any fat. They have barely any fat. Okay. Native Americans eating bison, they made pemmican with 50-50 ratio of tallow to dried beef, which is 80% calories from fat. There's 2 grams of fat per 1 gram of protein. Tell me how that's not a high fat diet exactly. Also, why are you comparing hunting deer now with mammoth 20,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, 1 million years ago, right? The bigger the animal, the larger the proportion of fat to body ratio. Did no one tell him that? I bet they did. I bet he does know that. And so he's comparing apples and oranges. And so that's what we have to do here and understand here, is that we're sort of comparing apples and oranges. Even though the Maasai eat milk and drink milk and things like that, that doesn't mean that we've always been drinking milk. It's just that that's what they have to do now to survive, because they need more in the way of nutrients and nutrition, and fat in particular. And so if you go back to when we were eating megafauna, there was tons of fat, and we went for the fat. And when those megafauna started getting less and less, that's when you started seeing our ancestors start, baking the bones and breaking marrow bones and cracking into them and getting at the marrow, because it's like that's a difficult process. They weren't doing that for a long time, and then all of a sudden there's not enough fat, and now you see them spending hours, breaking into these bones, and and that's something they didn't have to do before. So that's the argument is that it's because they needed more fat, and they were just trying to find different ways of getting more fat. And so, the idea that we're just lean and all that sort of stuff is like, first of all, were we eating plants during the ice ages? Which ones grow on ice shelves exactly? And the idea that we were, and which ones are we still eating now? Which plants were around that we were eating during the ice ages, 100,000 years ago, a million years ago, that even exist now in our grocery stores and things like that? We're not eating any plants that even existed during the last ice age. We've sort of bred them all predominantly. And so, it's a really bad argument. And it's a worse argument to say that, that animals are really lean. It's like, they weren't. That wasn't what they used to be. And when that switched, we started going to things like dairy and agriculture, because we had to supplement our diet, because we weren't getting enough, because we were normally getting what we needed from the megafauna. But places like Plains Indians in America, they were still doing just fine on the buffalo, bison, and very high fat. So that's my thoughts on that. So Lilu, thank you for the super chat. Can carnivore heal nerve pain and pinched nerve in the back? It certainly can. In some cases, it can reduce the inflammation, and it can reduce the pain experienced by this. It's not going to decompress your nerve. And so depending on how bad that is, now if you have sort of a narrowing and it just sort of barely touches that nerve, and that can be enough to really upset the nerve and cause a lot of pain, even though it's not just smashed down. That can be enough. And if that's the case, then yes, it certainly could help to that extent, that it can reduce the inflammation, reduce the pain. Something like you do a steroid injection in that area, reduces the inflammation, reduces the pain. But then that irritation can come back and all that sort of stuff. And then the steroid shot wears off and the pain can come back. But it doesn't always. So this sort of does that same thing. This addresses the underlying cause of the inflammation and irritation, and sort of settles that down. Now, if it's real compressed, it's not gonna decompress that, but it can help the inflammation side of things. And I have seen people improve enough that they didn't necessarily need surgery, or people that have had the surgery decompress the nerves, but the nerves are just permanently damaged, and they just constantly sending off this pain signal. And we do another MRI, and you see, like, look, this is completely clear. I mean, maybe even do another surgery just to make sure there's nothing there that the MRI didn't pick up, and they still have pain. And that unfortunately does happen. And then, you just have sort of that, well, look, you have to sort of get you into like a chronic pain clinic, because, there's no surgical options. Unfortunately, we can't fix this. Those people I've seen do very well with a carnivore diet, because that can reduce the inflammation and pain significantly, because now it's very much decompressed, and then that can help the nerve maybe heal, but certainly reduce the amount of inflammation that's there. For whatever the mechanism, people do improve. Does that mean everyone's going to improve? Probably not. Hopefully everyone will improve to some degree, but not everybody will necessarily completely resolve it. But I've seen a lot of really good outcomes from that. So it's definitely worth a try. Super chat from El Marie. Thank you for saying hello. Hello, and thank you for helping me and many others be at their best with their health. My psoriasis, dermatitis, and restless legs are gone. Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm really glad to hear that. It's nice to see you. Very sweet. So, super chat from Joseph. 33-year-old male, weightlifting 3 to 4 times a week, doing 1 meal a day. So would amino acids be okay, or should I consider 2 meals a day? I do feel really good on 1 meal a day. However, I need to increase protein. Yeah, I would just eat more. Yeah. I mean, you can even, if you want to keep it in a tight window, you could. It's less important on a carnivore diet or any ketogenic diet, because the main thing about eating once a day or keeping within an eating window is that you're reducing the amount of insulin that your body's producing in a day. So you're keeping your insulin levels sort of down. And that's very good and very important for a lot of physiological mechanisms. You need insulin, obviously you do, but you just don't want it too high, because that can cause harm. I would stay away from aminos. And I mean, you could take protein, you could do it, but you should not take anything that has flavorings, artificial sweeteners, or any sweeteners, because those are not going to be beneficial to you. The branched chain amino acids, it's hard to find them without flavorings and sweeteners, which you don't want. I've tried them on a carnivore diet. I don't have nearly as good workouts. I don't feel nearly as good. Don't have nearly the same energy that I do normally. And the opposite was true when I was eating a more traditional diet. I felt way better when I took the BCAAs, way better. And then it was exactly the opposite. I felt worse when I went carnivore and tried it. So I would not recommend that. There are branched chain amino acids that you can find that don't have flavorings and sweeteners. They taste remarkably bad. Trigger warning for people that are sort of sensitive to this sort of thing, but it actually tasted like vomit. That taste in your mouth after you throw up when you're sick as a kid or an adult, doing other things where you're vomiting, you have that strong acidy bile sort of taste in your mouth, and it's just really awful. That's what branched chain amino acids tasted like without sweeteners. They were bad. It was really bad. So, I mean, you can try that if you want, but it gave me an upset stomach just drinking like that. It tasted so bad that I just felt gross the rest of the day. So that really didn't help me. And you don't need it. I would eat twice a day. Yeah, definitely. You want to make sure that you're eating enough. If you're lifting weights and you're working out a lot, then you're going to need to eat more than once a day. Generally, I find that I generally need to eat twice a day if I'm going to do that. So yeah, just give your body what it needs, and you'll be fine. Okay, so here's a question from Dana Matulowicz. I'm sure I mispronounced that. So question, do you have any knowledge that going carnivore can help with HPA axis dysfunction? I'm 16 days on because so far nothing is helping. Thanks. It depends on the HPA dysfunction. It can help with certain things. It can certainly help normalize hormones in a lot of ways. Ketogenic diets have been shown to improve cortisol levels. Now, if you're, it depends on what's going wrong. If you have an injury to that area and your pituitary and is just not producing the hormones that it needs to because there's damage, it may help recover some of that damage, but it depends. It depends on the case, it depends on the person. And so if some people have to be on all the different sort of hormones that their pituitary makes and the hypothalamus makes for life because of this sort of injury or surgery or some sort of physical issue. And that could be the case, with medical issues for this as well. When you're eating what your body's designed to eat, you're going to work the way you're designed to work, but some people can still have problems, and that can certainly be HPA axis dysfunction as well. But it has improved quite a lot of hormones that come through the HPA axis. If you have pan hypopituitarism, there's generally a reason for that, and if it's anything but dietary related, then obviously there's going to be mixed results. There's going to be other things at play there. You can improve growth hormone, certainly, because when you reduce insulin, you improve your output and your production and action of growth hormone, because high insulin levels block the secretion and action of growth hormones. That's a major hormone there. It can also disrupt testosterone and estrogen and cortisol as well. So there are people that get put on a ketogenic diet because they have too much cortisol, and it actually ameliorates the symptoms and effects of hypercortisolism. And in women, if you're eating carbohydrates and your insulin is high, it can cause you to produce too much testosterone and not allow you to turn that into estrogen, which is normally what it does. So now you have way too much testosterone, not enough estrogen, and that can improve as well. So this can improve generally, and that's actually a major cause of PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is the leading cause of infertility in women. So there's a lot of things that it can help. It depends on what your dysfunction is. If you have an injury to the brain and the pituitary, it may only go so far, but it can absolutely improve that entire axis and all the different hormones involved in that for various reasons and mechanisms at different levels, at the pituitary level, at the adrenal level, at the ovaries, at the testes, all these sorts of things. So yes, it can definitely improve it. It depends on what the problem is though. So either way, it's worth a shot. Your body will improve in a number of different ways. And if it helps with that, great. Okay, Mike Sweet, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Dr. Chaffee. Mike Sweet again. Update on findings with my mom's diagnosis. Eartha, I'm thinking urethra, stage 4 cancer with high blood pressure, low hemoglobin, and low sodium. I was wondering, would there be a reason not to try carnivore? Well, first of all, I'm very sorry to hear about your mom. I hope she's okay. That's really tough, getting a diagnosis like that, and having those problems. No, I don't think there's any reason not to try carnivore. I think there's many reasons to try carnivore. I think that's going to be healthiest for her, regardless of her situation, just because she's human. And, meat is still the best thing for lions, regardless of their medical situation. Generally, it's even better for lions that have medical conditions, because you obviously don't want to be feeding them things that they're not designed for. Their body has more of trouble with when they're in times of stress. And cancer is certainly one of those times. So if you look at my video with Professor Thomas Seyfried, Seyfried, you'll see the mechanisms and the cancer biology behind why Professor Seyfried and others like myself would recommend these dietary interventions, especially when you're trying to address mitochondrial dysfunction, which is being shown to be a root cause in cancer and can help starve out the cancer, because cancer cells, because of their underlying dysfunction with their mitochondria, and nearly all cancers, the cancer cells require 400 times the amount of glucose that normal cells do. And normal cells can run on ketones. Cancer cells really can't. And so, at least by and large. And so I think that that's definitely something to consider. I would watch that presentation and discussion with Professor Seyfried and go with that. But no, I don't think there's any reason not to try this. I can't think of any reason why it would be a bad idea in your mom's case. And I think that it would help her in a lot of ways, and certainly make her feel better and feel healthier, and hopefully improve her condition there. But obviously there's no guarantees, and sometimes there's a point of no return that you can't, even though you're doing all the right things, it's sort of not enough, unfortunately. So this isn't a cure-all, but it can certainly help your body improve in such ways that your body can recover from a lot of things, but it's not going to recover from everything, unfortunately. But good luck to her. I really hope that she does well. I do hope that she gives it a try. With cancer, you need to be really on top of your GKI, glucose ketone index. So that's a ratio of your blood glucose and your blood ketones. There's a formula available on Dr. Seyfried's published works on GKI and how to figure that out, depending on your area and your units. And I would do that. And you need to keep that below 2, under 1 if possible. And you do that with a combination of diet and fasting. And so however you have to do that, you just sort of keep that under. And if you are using fasting, you do have to have refeed days because you don't want people to lose too much weight because they need food. Your body needs food. So it's, but that's important. That's an important side of things. So that's what I would do if it were me or my parents. So good luck with that. Good luck to her. Harrison, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Dr. Chaffee. Love your work. Thanks for all you do. I've had a varicocele since puberty 10 years ago. Have you ever heard or seen a varicocele improvement on carnivore? No, that's interesting. No, I haven't. Probably just because it doesn't come up all that often, but that'd be interesting. No, I haven't seen that specifically improve. I haven't had anybody basically tell me, because a lot of these things are just people coming forward and talking about it. What is interesting is different Facebook groups that have been around for 20 years, 30 years, some of these things, at least 20, things like zeroing in on health and zero carb health. It's funny. There was a guy, I don't know what his MO is, but he keeps tagging me in things and other sorts of people say, oh, this carnivore thing is just going to be the worst mistake everyone ever made. And then he's like saying that we're taking all this cherry picked anecdotal things. And then his proof of that is, and that people are actually having problems with it. His proof of that is literally cherry picking, one thing here and there from these groups. And he said that, oh yeah, I took this from a Facebook group because I was interested in it, and it has hundreds of people in it. And there's these people that are having a problem. Okay, so there's like one or two people having a problem, and it's something that has hundreds of people. So not the ones that have tens of thousands of people that have been doing it for 20 or 30 years and have had no problems, such as you're describing. So that's literally cherry picking, and it's just a bit dishonest. Get the Jew's name because I don't really care, but that's just how these people roll, really. But you can go to the Facebook groups like Zeroing In on Health and Zero Carb Health, which have been around for yonks, and you can put that in. You put in varicocele and carnivore diet, and you should see there should be people on there and see what they have to say about that. It could be that a lot of people have had improvement. It could be it's one of those things that people are like, yeah, it didn't really change anything, which can happen. Not everything's caused, as a product of our diet. So, but a lot of things are. So, I would check there. And then if it does help, let us know. It'd be good for other people too. So thanks for that. Julia Tillman, thank you for the super chat. I have several autoimmune disorders and had a benign brain tumor removed 2 years ago. I've been on carnivore 4 weeks, down 21 pounds. Wow, very good. How can I flush the contrast? Yeah, so the contrast from MRIs just takes time. It just takes time and abstinence from more contrast. So if you are on follow-up for your brain tumor, benign brain tumor, could be a meningioma, could be something else, but generally this goes for 20 years or so of follow-up, and they're going to want gadolinium contrast to go in with it. You can refuse that. You can just say, look, I really don't want that. There are some people that would argue that you can see everything you need to see without contrast, but it is a lot easier to see little points of growth when you have contrast, because there's contrast enhancement. And so you have different things like, okay, well, that's bigger, that's smaller, whatever, that's a similar size, but now all of a sudden there's this point of contrast enhancement, that contrast is being taken up there. And that could mean that that's an area that's more metabolically active and probably growing faster, and is something to watch out for a bit more closely. So that's generally why we want to use gadolinium, but I agree it's not something that is really great for us, and it can build up and it can cause problems. It takes years to get out of your body if it really comes out at all. But if it does come out, it takes a long time. So it's really just time, eating properly, not exposing yourself to different sorts of things your body, has to have a hard time getting rid of, and avoiding the contrast. So that's something that you're going to have to sort of figure out with your surgeon to say, hey, is this something I have to have? they're going to say yes because that makes it easier for them. But most people will understand, like, this isn't really something you want to do. You don't want this stuff, having high doses of this stuff and regular gadolinium scans, too often, because it does build up and it can cause problems. So, again, you're the patient. It's your body. You get to decide. So it makes it a bit harder. Maybe you'll miss some more subtle signs, and that's a potential. So that's a potential risk. But the other side of it is you risk the buildup of the contrast. So you sort of have to weigh that and make that decision. There are people like Andrew Scarborough, who actually wrote a book about contrast imaging and things like that. And he doesn't think you need any of this stuff. And he's got a GBM, brain tumor, malignant brain tumor. And so he just gets it without the contrast, and you can see pretty much well enough. And he's been doing fine with that. But yeah. But those are the drawbacks. Those are the pros and cons. It's like it may not be as accurate, may not catch more subtle signs earlier, but you don't have the buildup as well. So that's really it. It's just time. You got to get that out. I don't know of any protocols that you can get rid of that stuff, but there might be out there. I just don't know of them. But yeah, good luck with that anyway. Fully laden swell. That's a Monty Python reference. Thank you for the super chat. Greetings, Dr. Chaffee. To your knowledge, does having Hashimoto's conceivably affect A1C levels and weight gain? Currently trying to adjust my levothyroxine dosage. Thanks for all you do. It shouldn't really affect A1C, but it can certainly affect weight gain. If you have thyroid dysfunction and you're hypothyroid, then you can definitely put on weight. Certainly, you can do that. Levothyroxine, you want to sort of adjust that by A, your symptoms, and B, your blood tests. And you want to get, again, like I said earlier, you want to get into a range of your thyroid function tests and your TSH that are in that optimal range, not just the range that they have from the lab, because most people are out of balance. And so that's not helpful. Also, you feel that your TSH is normal and your free T4 is normal. Most people stop there. Most people stop at the TSH when they're checking this sort of thing. But maybe you're not feeling as good as you want to, and then you check your free T4 and free T3. Levothyroxine is T4, and that gets converted into T3, and that's what actually does the business that you want. And so some people don't convert T4 into T3 very well, and so maybe they have all the T4 that they need, and their TSH is being lowered because of that, because it's seeing the T4. But maybe your T3 is just bottomed out, and you're going to feel pretty bad. You're going to have hypothyroidism because you're not going to get the effects of the thyroid hormone that you need. So you need to take something like slow release T3. So it's just the T3 slow release, and you get that level up, and that's better. And then there's the next stage of complexity, which is reverse T3. Is like, okay, maybe you have normal serum levels of T3, but is that getting into the cell and actually doing its job? And we don't really have a good way of measuring that, but reverse T3 is sort of the best marker of that. And so if that's elevated, then that means that the T3 isn't getting in there and doing as much of a job as your body wants. So I would check the rest of that, and I would make the judgment with your doctor based on those lab tests and how you're feeling. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor at Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys. Thank you, Dr. Chaffee. What are your thoughts on supplementing taurine and glycine? I don't think you necessarily need to. You get all that in meat. Something like taurine can be denatured when you cook it. So if you're if you're wanting to get more taurine and things like that, then just cook less. Don't cook it as much. Maybe sear the outside, leave the inside raw, that sort of thing, or rare. And I mean, I haven't looked into it too closely, but from different people, I've heard that taurine and all these sorts of things are actually really good for you, associated with a lot of positive health outcomes and longevity and things like that. So it's good to have. You do make it. Is more better? It seems to be, but it could be that you get, I mean, you'll get plenty just from meat, even if it's cooked, as long as it's not like well done all the time. Like if all the meat you're cooking is well done all the time, then you're probably not going to get all that much taurine. But I wouldn't worry too much about it, just because you will get it, and it's not strictly essential, but it can be conditionally essential. If you're not making enough of it, or it just would improve your situation in other ways. But yeah. Okay, let me see how many we got. I think probably at this point we're gonna have to cap the super chats, just because I have about a half an hour, and we have sort of enough of these things built up that I don't want to not get at them. So yeah. All right. So MSM, thank you very much for the super chat. Female, been carnivore for 3 days, bloated, bad all the time. Prior to carnivore, metformin once a day, 500 milligrams for 3 months, no bloat. 215 pounds currently, about 28% body fat. So, well, first of all, I wouldn't change any of your medications. If you're on metformin before, I would continue taking the metformin. Metformin can cause GI upset, but it's it sounds like that you tolerated that pretty well, which is great. Bloating is generally relieved when you just go carnivore, especially when you're getting rid of all the fiber and things like that. So just make sure, people say they go carnivore, but what kind of carnivore? Are you doing only meat, only water? That's it. If you're not, then do that. And just give it time. Your body can take time to readjust and figure out what the hell is going on. When you dramatically change the things that you're eating. 3 days is very early. I mean, I give this at least 30 days to see how your body handles it and your body deals with it. So I would just keep going with it. Make sure you're getting enough fat. Make sure you're getting enough meat in general. Make sure you're not eating anything else except meat and water. And I think you'll do well. Let's see here. It's a question from Laura Roselle. I think she had a super chat that didn't get linked. So here's the question. Thank you for the super chat, Laura. 70-year-old female, carnivore for 1 year, 5'6", 120 pounds. HDL is 113. Wow, that's fantastic. LDL is 200. Triglycerides are 42. But blood glucose never below 90. Usually 120 after eating. Any clues? Well, your blood sugar can go up a bit just with protein, and it has an insulin response as well. I wouldn't worry too much. You look at all those other things, and those are all massively, excellent metabolic markers. Your HDL is huge. That's amazing, and triglycerides are very low. I mean, you have nearly triple your HDL to triglycerides. So that's fantastic. And it depends on when you're checking your blood sugar and all these sorts of things, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. You check your A1C, if that's doing well. If you check your fasting insulin, if that's doing well, you're doing well. And I wouldn't worry too much about your specific levels of glucose. I mean 90 is fine. There's no problem with 90. Going above 100 after you've eaten, that's actually pretty normal as well. I mean, certainly, like if you have people eating carbohydrates, going to go way above that, and then come down. But no, I wouldn't worry too much about that. It looks like you're doing well, and if you're feeling well and you're doing well in other ways, then that's fine. You can also get stress levels. You can get your cortisol level up if you're having a lot of stress in your life and things are a bit difficult. That will raise your cortisol. That will raise your blood sugar as well, and that can cause issues. I wouldn't think that it's causing too much of that though, because your triglycerides are very low. Generally, you see your triglycerides start to creep up if you are if you have too much glucose and you're having chronically elevated glucose and things like that. So I would expect that your glucose at other levels are fine. First of all, under 100, it's fine. And after you eat, it's going to come up a bit. That's fine. And so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Your average overall is really what we're more concerned about. And your fasting insulin levels is something that we're more concerned about. And but yeah, otherwise, I don't think you have much to worry about from that. It sounds like you're doing great, which is good to hear. Ominous, thank you very much for the super chat. Hello, Dr. Chaffee. My wife is carnivore and just had blood work done. She has elevated ionized calcium and thyroid hormone. She would love some advice. Thank you very much. Elevated ionized calcium and thyroid hormone. Well, I guess it would matter what levels. I mean, what they're elevated to. Again, with reference ranges, they're generally too low because most people are low in everything. Or things that aren't supposed to be elevated are elevated when they shouldn't be, and so you sort of get this imbalance of the lab tests that aren't very accurate. They aren't very helpful, and so having elevated thyroid hormone, I would bet you that just means that her thyroid hormone is actually just in the level it's supposed to be. If she has hyperthyroidism, it's very elevated, and she's having symptoms of that, well, then there could be something else going on, like Graves' disease or something. But I have seen patients with Graves' disease, like every other autoimmune issue I've ever seen, improve dramatically. So I would be suspicious that elevated thyroid hormone is really just like getting back into a more normal level, and that and if it's massively elevated, then you need to start looking into things like Graves' disease and those causes and other causes of hyperthyroidism. Ionized calcium, I don't know necessarily why that would be up. I don't know if she's taking any supplements. Usually not advisable. Women that take calcium supplements. I mean, this is one of those things that that guy was talking about. With all sorts of things, about saying that, oxalates aren't that big of a deal. You can just take some calcium. I'm like, well, first of all, if you don't eat the oxalates in the first place, you don't have to take the calcium. Second of all, calcium supplementation in women has been shown to increase heart disease by 15%, atherosclerosis by 15%. So why the hell would you want to do that? So that's not a good option. So ionized calcium, I don't know why that would necessarily be up. Unless she's taking, supplements and things like that, or having high bone turnover. But I wouldn't really expect that on a carnivore diet. So I mean, you can sort of investigate that, but it's not necessarily a problem. I mean, I don't really check for ionized calcium all that often, so I don't know why that was specifically looked for. So if the doctor has a suspicion on something that's going on, and that's why they checked for the calcium, obviously good to check up with them on why that is. The thyroid hormone, it's either just her thyroid's improved, and that's just higher than we normally see people, because most people have low-lying thyroid issues, and this is just actually getting up into a more normal range. But it could be something more sinister, which would need to be investigated. So again, a carnivore diet can help improve a lot of things, but it's not going to fix everything. And so if people have underlying health conditions that are caused by something else, then it can improve their overall situation. It can make their body healthier in a lot of ways to deal with these sorts of issues, but it's not going to help those things that aren't being caused by an inappropriate diet. So getting back onto an appropriate diet doesn't fix things that aren't caused by an inappropriate diet. So definitely worth investigating and sort of seeing exactly where she is in the thyroid hormone levels, and do the rest of her thyroid panel as well. If it is markedly elevated, looking for things like Graves' disease and other sorts of things, especially if she's symptomatic, with palpitations and rapid heartbeat, and it goes into atrial fibrillation or something like that. So check that out. But I wouldn't see why carnivore diet would cause any sort of dysfunction anyway in that case. So, but those things would do with a bit more investigation and looking into with her doctor. Common Dog, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm 37, pescatarian, 15 plus years, heart surgery at 27 due to stenosis of root and regurgitation of bicuspid aortic valve. On thinners with a mechanical valve. Carnivore 2 months, always been lean. Is stenosis an indicator of CAC? No, not necessarily. I mean, you can get calcification of your valves. I don't know specifically if that is also associated with calcification in other parts of your body, potentially. If you don't have the buildup of this plaque, then there's nothing to calcify in the first place. Sort of the argument there is if you start getting, at some point these plaques are going to calcify. And so if you do start calcifying, it means you have soft plaque already, and then that's starting to calcify. But if you've had, so it depends on what the stenosis was caused by. Sometimes the stenosis of your valve is caused by calcification of that valve. If that's happening at 27, there's something underlying going on there. And so I would wonder what that is, but you can get stenosis of those valves for other reasons besides calcification. Easy thing to do is just check your CAC score. That doesn't show you soft plaque. It only shows you the calcified plaque. But I don't know of a connection between the two, but there may be. It depends on what the stenosis is caused by. If it's calcification, stenosis from calcification, yeah, maybe. But I've never heard of that, but I haven't looked into it either. But easy enough to just check your CAC score. Cookie Monster, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Doc. I'm 33, have familial hypercholesterolemia. Dad had a triple bypass at age 37, was a smoker. I've been recommended PCSK9. Can we get in touch for a one-on-one? What would you recommend? Well, we can certainly do a one-on-one. I do make myself available for consultations. I try to make everything available for free online, so people don't have to do consultations because I have to charge because it takes a lot of time. But but if there are things that aren't being answered in my online things that people can access for free, then, or specific cases and things like that, then certainly can try and help with that. I have a link that I can put in the description here. It usually is in the descriptions of these and everything else. You can go down do a private consultation for 60 minutes or 30 minutes. There's a link for each, and you can schedule that in. But it's not cheap. I have to make this worth it to people so that I'm only talking to people that seriously need help, because I don't have a lot of time to do this, because I'm doing this sort of on the side of everything else, and it's difficult. But just for this, I don't think you necessarily need a consultation. I give you a piece of advice or my thoughts on it just now, which is familial hypercholesterolemia is associated with clotting disorders as well. And so people that have that are more likely to have a clotting disorder. And when you differentiate out between the people that have a clotting disorder and high cholesterol and the people that only have the high cholesterol, it's the people that have the clotting disorder as well as the high cholesterol that have the increased rates of heart disease and heart attacks. And the ones that only have the high cholesterol, exactly the same as the rest of the population. Now, your dad's a smoker, obviously going to increase his risk. He could have the clotting disorder, definitely going to increase his risk. But when you look at familial hypercholesterolemia, there are increased heart attacks and things like that in the earlier decades. When you get to about 50, it evens off, it levels off, and you get to about 70, it's actually lower risk for some weird reason. But those are the broad population statistics. And again, if you separate out clotting disorder from just the high cholesterol, it's really only ones with clotting disorder that are having a problem. So it's not the cholesterol. Again, 1,000 times, it's not the cholesterol. There's something else going on there. And so you can get checked. So you should get checked and see if you have that clotting disorder, because that's a different treatment. You don't treat clotting disorders by lowering your cholesterol. You treat clotting disorders with, antiplatelet therapy or anticoagulant therapy. And so for that clotting disorder, I don't actually know exactly what it is that they get. I just know that they get increased risk of getting clotting disorders, that you need to be on an appropriate treatment for that clotting disorder, and that will improve your outcomes. And obviously, don't smoke, don't drink, don't have sugar and all these other sorts of things, and seed oils and all that sort of stuff. So I still think that a high-fat carnivore diet is exactly what you want to do. Dietary cholesterol really doesn't affect your serum cholesterol. But if you stop eating carbohydrates, if you stop eating food at all, your LDL will go up. So that's a metabolic difference. That's not a strictly dietary intake difference. Okay, so it's dietary in the sense that you change your metabolism based on what you eat, but it's not that you eat cholesterol and your cholesterol goes up. You stop eating altogether, your cholesterol will go up. So is fasting a detriment to your cardiac health? No, in fact, it's shown that fasting is very, very helpful for many different health outcomes. So those are my thoughts on that. I don't think you necessarily need to book a consultation, but if you would like to, should be down in the description of these and all my videos as well. But that's what I would do. I would get checked out for a clotting disorder, and if you do have a clotting disorder, I would get on appropriate treatment for that, and don't smoke. That's exactly what I would do. Okay, so good luck with that. Vince, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm 36 days carnivore, mostly grass-fed ribeyes. When I go more than 1 to 1 gram of fat to protein, I still have diarrhea. Should I keep eating higher fat ratio to push it through, or stick with 1 to 1 for now? No, stick with 1 to 1. So you aim for 1 to 1 or 2 to 1 and see how much your body can take in. Your body has a limited capacity to absorb fat. And so, after a certain point, your body's not going to be able to absorb fat. So that's fine. It goes out. Great. So there's an overflow valve. So you're never going to eat too much fat, because there's no such thing as too much fat in that sense, because you're not going to absorb it. It's very difficult for your body to absorb fat without bile. So you can overabsorb fat if you're taking things like ox bile, but I don't ever recommend people doing that outside of very specific, isolated circumstances. Certainly not for most people. So just eat as fatty as you can until you get soft stools and don't get diarrhea. If you do get loose stools, it's not an infection. It's not a problem. You're not harming yourself. It's just inconvenient. You could, just might be just a bit like, oh God, got to run. So that's the main problem with that. But it's not causing a health detriment in any case. But yeah, you just eat as much fat as your body can handle, to where you're getting soft stools but not getting loose stools. Yeah, and that's fine. Turboyne 215, thank you very much for the super chat. Does drinking water with your meal dilute stomach acid, bile, and deteriorating your digestive efficiency? Yeah, I think it does. So you're just sort of going to water things down, and it may not be able to absorb it or digest things as well. You'll probably do just fine, but some people are a bit more sensitive to this. They have a bit of more digestive issues, and so they just need to be a bit more careful. And so they just basically don't drink water for 2 hours before or after your meal, especially if you're doing sort of 1 meal a day. Easier to do. If you're doing 3 meals a day, less easy, but still doable. But most people don't need to eat multiple times a day unless you have your gallbladder out and you need to sort of split up your fatty meals throughout the day. So just do the best you can. But yeah, I think it does improve digestion, and also it leaves space in your stomach for meat. And it may be that you're filling up physically that area of your stomach with water, and now you're not getting enough meat in, and so maybe you're under eating. And so that's something to consider as well. And especially people who have had bypass surgery, they definitely need to avoid water, for the dilution, but really for the volume reasons, because you need to have as much volume available as possible for the meat that you're eating, because you're going to be eating very small amounts because they've just butchered you, unfortunately. And I'm not a big fan of weight loss surgery. I don't think it's helpful. Maybe historically it was, well, this is sort of the best thing we could do. But I was always, like, why are we cutting out major organs? I mean, like, Jesus Christ, that's not the way to do this. And certainly not now. I mean, I think even when you do weight loss surgery and you don't address the underlying eating habits that people have. Sometimes they make them worse because they can't eat anything. Well, you just need at least 1,200 calories. You just have to get it. So eat ice cream and drink sodas and just get calories in you. That's retarded. I mean, that is just ridiculous that they would say that. And I've heard them say that. I've heard dietitians and I've heard weight loss surgeons say that. Just eat whatever you have to. Just get the calories up. Bullshit. You are now, someone has just come to you that that had such bad issues with their weight management and control that they've gone through this radical surgery and just chopped out and eviscerated themselves. And now you're telling them to make their eating habits worse. I mean, what the hell is wrong with you? And people, so they get worse eating habits, or they never change their eating habits, right? It's like Ozempic. Oh, I can take Ozempic and I can eat whatever the hell I want. Okay, for now. And then in 2 years, you'll gain back more weight than you lost before. Your body will be primed to gain more weight and metabolically less healthy weight, and you'll have even worse eating habits, or you just die, right? Which we're getting now more, reports of people dying from taking Ozempic, right? So, I mean, what the hell are we doing here? So it's much better to address the underlying cause of this, which is just eating the wrong thing, right? So you get better eating habits. And the problem is too, that these people have tried every single diet that exists up until now, and they haven't had good results. They've had terrible results. And so, okay, I just have to get surgery, I guess. Right. Well, no, because, they can do a carnivore diet and not have this issue. And so, anyway, a little bit of a tangent and a rant, but I think worth saying. Pure-blooded Patriot, thank you very much for the super chat. Day 25, arthritis gone, slept all night, first time in 5 years. That's fantastic. It's really good to see, and great to see that you're doing well. Keep it up. You're just in that sweet spot now where your body's going to start really, really, really feeling amazing, and you're going to do better and better and better as you go. So I'm really excited for you. Let's see here. Happy and healthy lifestyle. Thank you very much for the super chat. 57-year-old female, 5'10", 146 pounds. Total cholesterol was 277. LDL was 154. On keto carnivore for 4 months. Now total cholesterol is increased and LDL is increased as well. Doc says statins now. What do you say? Again, you just fast. You just stop eating. Those numbers are going to go up, right? Total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol have been seen in large population studies to actually be associated with longevity. And there are a lot of studies like the Framingham study, which I'm sure your doctor was taught, probably the only thing your doctor was taught in medical school, is really the only one I was taught in medical school as far as these studies condemning cholesterol. They actually show an inverse relationship between cholesterol and heart disease. So the higher your cholesterol, the lower your rates of heart disease and cardiac death and cardiovascular death, right? So when people's cholesterol went down, death rate went up in the Framingham study, but that was misreported by the American Heart Association, which has been long bought and paid for by the sugar companies and the different industries to push their carb-fueled sugar agenda and to vilify fat. So I would watch my video on the truth about cholesterol and heart disease, and I would watch my interview with Dr. Aseem Malhotra, who wrote a book called A Statin-Free Life, and then make an informed decision on what you want to do. But that's very normal. You just stop eating entirely. Your cholesterol will do exactly that. And, you stop eating carbohydrates, it'll do exactly that as well, because this is a metabolic issue. Your insulin goes down, your metabolism changes, and that's what changes your LDL and total cholesterol. It's not eating cholesterol. It's not eating saturated fat. We know this from studies giving people 36 eggs a day for weeks, and it doesn't change their cholesterol. So dietary cholesterol really doesn't affect serum cholesterol. So what the hell is the problem? I mean, people get so, they have two conflicting ideas in their head at the same time. They're like, oh yeah, dietary cholesterol doesn't affect serum cholesterol, but you need to change your diet. because of your cholesterol. What the hell did you just say? You literally just said your dietary cholesterol doesn't affect your serum cholesterol, but my God, you have to stop eating so much cholesterol. Use your damn brain, or we can't be friends. Like it's just ridiculous. So I would watch those 2 videos, and I would make a more informed decision for yourself. And even if you decide to go on it, at least you're making it. At least you're making you're doing it in an informed fashion, and that's always the way to go. Always learning. Thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Doc. Have you read Peter Attia's new book, Outlive? If so, do you have any thoughts about his claims about statins and cholesterol? No, I haven't read his book. I probably should. I just really don't have time at the moment. I have heard that he thinks that we should be on statins. I fundamentally disagree with that. I don't think that cholesterol was ever a problem in the first place, so I don't see why we should be trying to treat it and address it and lower it. We've been lowering cholesterol with diet and by giving high fiber diets, which can pull out bile, which can lower your cholesterol, and then drugs and things like that that can do the same, and all sorts of stuff. Hasn't helped. In fact, the prevalence and incidence of heart disease and heart attacks has gone up, and it continues to go up, right? So I don't buy that. And we've had statins for a long time. It's not helping. So it's not certainly helping the people developing heart disease and having first-time heart attacks. That is going up. So if this was so helpful, why isn't it helping? Mark Washington, thank you very much for the super sticker. That's very kind of you. Wisdom Andy, thank you for the super chat. What would you say is the most convincing truth of carnivore that helps people realize it's not just a fad? What do you tell your patients? I have a lot of family that are unconvinced. Thank you very much. So I think that the main thing is this is our biological design. And I tell patients, they say, okay, well, what's the idea here? I was like, well, the whole idea is that, you go back to your biological roots. This is how we're designed to eat. All animals have a biological design. Sorry, there's a cat tail here. It looks like a rat tail, but it's actually a cat tail. All animals have a biological design. All animals have a species-specific diet. You sort of walk them through that and just say, like, look, the same thing applies to humans. Humans are animals, and we have a biological design. And all humans are different. All lions are different. And if you take every single lion on earth and give them asparagus or gazelle, you will not find a single lion that does better on asparagus than gazelle, because they're all lions. We're all humans. And so it's really just pointing out that this is, what we've been eating for 2 million years is by definition not a fad. A fad is something that has only sort of a flash in the pan. It just sort of comes and goes. 2 million years is not a fad. You know what is a fad? All the processed food crap that we're eating now, because that didn't even exist 100 years ago, right? So that's by definition more like a fad than anything else. Really, plants in general, that's a fad. That's something that's a necessity that we've had to go through since agriculture, because people just, we're having trouble getting enough nutrition just from hunting, because the megafauna died out and there's mass extinctions and things like that. Fine. Okay. So you had to go to somewhere else, but that doesn't mean that we're biologically designed for it. So you just point that out, and you point out that, since agriculture, 10,000 years ago, everywhere in the world, at every time period, everywhere, in every example, when populations switched over to agriculture, they had significant problems with their health, and their skeletons shrank, their brains shrank. They had all these different markers of disease and malnutrition exactly when they switched over to agriculture, right? And we see this in current populations, where the Native Americans and Plains Indians, when they were eating just bison, before we wiped out all the bison, unfortunately, they were the tallest human beings on earth. Now they are not. Now they have a lot of these diseases, and they're more likely to get diseases and diabetes and cancer and heart disease and things like that. They're far more likely to get that. So it's we see that right now. We see that with the Maasai and the Akikuyu. Maasai eating a lot of meat and animal products, Akikuyu eating largely plants. exact same disparity. Akikuyu are 5 inches shorter. They're weaker. They're more sickly. They have more infections. They have all sorts of problems that we see very similar to those differences and disparities when you switch from a hunter society to an agricultural society. So that's how I would point it out, that this is our biological design. This is what we've been eating for 2 million years. That's by definition not a fad. So it's just that we've forgotten that, we've pushed away from that, and we've been in a fad now. We've had the fad diet of processed food and garbage, which didn't exist, that pulled us away from eating a lot of meat, and predominantly meat. So that's the fad. It's not the meat. The meat's always been there. We've always been eating meat. Eating plants is new. That's the new thing. That's the thing that needs to be proven. We've always eaten meat. We've always had great health when eating meat, and better health when eating meat. So that's the norm. That's the standard. Everything else is the fad. Everything else needs to be proven, and they have not done so. Mike Sweet, thank you for the super chat. Awesome. Thank you so much. My parents were watching. You're the best kind of person. Oh, thanks. Well, I'm glad that they were watching. I'm glad that helped. And hopefully you all do well as a result. Well, we just sort of got a couple more here, guys. And then I've got to run to the clinic. Donna, CFSME is indeed chronic fatigue syndrome. Okay, great. Instead of using medicine like levothyroxine, is homeopathy a good way to go for Hashimoto's? I mean, homeopathy, by definition, is something that has, there's no molecules of anything in there besides water. You take a small bit of something, you put it into a 50-gallon drum of water, you stir it in a special way, you take a drop out of that, you dilute it again and stir it again and dilute it again and do all that sort of stuff. And so that's the idea, that you sort of get this molecular memory in the water, and then that can do something with your body. Now, there is molecular memory in water. They sort of hold the sort of a crystalline structure just by how the hydrogen and oxygen molecules sort of form. They sort of bind. This is why this is a very light molecule. It should be a gas, and yet because it has this, they bind to each other in a specific way, sort of crystalline lattice. It's a liquid at room temperature. It shouldn't be for that size of a molecule. It should just be gaseous. None of us would be here if it were, though. It's very important that it works like that. And so you can get sort of a disruption of that crystalline status, so something goes in there and now it makes this crystal form around it. Well, if that is in a different form, does that do anything for you? Maybe, maybe not, but it doesn't matter, because when that moves away, it only stays there for like a fraction of a second, then it's gone. So that molecular memory is not long lasting. And then you drink that and you move it and you swirl it and you push it and it's interacting with other chemicals. It just goes away anyway. So I wouldn't think so. The thing with Hashimoto's is it's a two-pronged disease. It's the autoimmune issue. Your body's making antibodies that are attacking your body. If you have one autoimmune issue, you're likely to have other autoimmune issues. So you need to address that. And again, the underlying issue there is eating the wrong thing. Your body reacts to it. And I see people's antibodies come right down if they go onto a pure red meat and water diet and get rid of everything else. They're very important. As those antibodies come down, you can start getting improvements in your thyroid, but this is damaging your thyroid. So you have direct damage to your thyroid, and really the only thing for that is replacing that thyroid hormone. You need thyroid hormone. It's very important. It's used in every single cell in the body. It's very, very, very vital. And so if that's too low, you have other problems, and you can certainly be very tired from that and have low energy and other sort of symptoms as well. So I would still take the medication. I would still try to make sure that your TSH is below 1.5 and your free T4 and free T3 are all in good ranges, because levothyroxine, again, is T4. Not everyone converts that very well into T3. So it's important to check your free T3 as well and make sure that's in a good range. And if you're still having symptoms, you're not feeling your best, check your reverse T3 and make sure that that's not elevated. Sort of want that around 150. Most people are double that, triple that, quadruple that. And so that can make a big difference. And for that, again, you would get a more targeted dose of just like slow release T3. But that's obviously something to work with your doctor on. And if your doctor's not that familiar with the more in-depth tests, or doesn't think that they're necessary, you can always find someone who is a bit more familiar with that and understands a bit more that these reference ranges that we use from the lab are not useful in the slightest. And so just seek someone out of that description. JG, thank you very much for the super chat. Are there any teas that are okay to drink primarily for flavor other than water without negatively affecting your body and have some added health? I mean, all teas are going to be from plants, or are going to be really basically leaves. Leaves are more protected because the plant doesn't want you to eat this leaves, because that's where it gets its energy from, right? So that's why it has these tannins and phytates and caffeine, things like that. These are all defense molecules, right? So you want to try to eliminate most of that. Now, if you had some sort of tea that you felt wasn't causing too much of an issue, you don't really light tea, then and you enjoyed that, then that's fine. A lot of people actually enjoy just hot water, or you can make bulletproof water. Something that my friend Serena did. She goes by Serena Carnivore on Instagram, and she just takes the just hot water, stick a butter in it, blend it, and just like you make bulletproof coffee, but you're doing it with just water, and you drink that. So it's all creamy and nice and smooth. It's actually good. And so you can try that as well. Or bone broth. That's just a nice warm flavored drink that is good for you. So any plant is going to come with harm to some degree. Is it all that much? Is it going to make a huge difference? Is it going to change your life? Maybe not. Especially if it's a more white tea that's as light as possible. You're just going to have less and less defense chemicals in there. So just but just try it out. There's going to have something in there. So you can try these other alternatives. If they're not really cutting the mustard, then then and you want to use the tea, and you find that the effects that it has are pretty minimal, or such that you're happy taking them, fine. My mom likes tea, and she's always loved tea, and she kept going with that for a while. Then she sort of came off of it for a while, and then she went back on it for a while, and sort of maybe she didn't feel that on a day-to-day basis, but she actually did notice that she wasn't putting any cream or sugar or anything like that. It's just straight tea. It was actually affecting her blood sugar numbers. She was diabetic, and she had like perfect control, and all of a sudden it's a bit wonky. So she was like, "Oh, damn it! I sort of have to avoid tea." I don't know how that's affecting her blood sugar and insulin, things like that. Obviously, something in the caffeine and the different chemicals are disrupting something because there's no sugar in it. Right. But the tea itself was screwing with her diabetes. So, she had to come off of that again. I think she just sort of goes back and forth. So it's really just up to you. If you find that you're fine with it and it's not that big of a deal, then that's fine. But there are other options. There's certainly other options that you can do and get used to. I mean, I just, drink water generally. If I want something warm, I drink warm water. Almost never do. Water's fine. And, but if it's a cold day and you want something warm, bone broth is a great option too. So, and they used to call that beef tea. My great grandfather used to do that when you go to like a sporting event or something like that. You have like a thermos full of just beef broth, bone broth, whatever, and it's just beef tea, and they just drink that and then stay warm. So that's an option too. Okay, this will be the last one, everyone, and then I'll have to run. Jesse Riddle says, Dr. Chaffee, you are incredible. Only content creator that got me to make the switch. Such love and respect for you. Oh, well, that's very sweet. Thank you very much for that. And I appreciate it. And okay, so that's everything we got there, guys. That wasn't really a question. That was just sort of a start when it came up. But that's thank you very much, Jesse. That's very kind of you. All right, everyone. I've got to run to the clinics. I've got patients coming in the next little while. But thank you, everyone. It's great to see you all. We're going to keep doing these sort of same time, same day going forward, except for the next 2 weeks when I'm away. But we'll still be doing the premieres for the new episodes and things like that. And that will be on Sundays and Wednesdays. And so I'll be text chatting with everybody for those. So please do show up for those. And then we'll get the lives back going again in 3 weeks' time. And maybe we can go for longer. It just depends on work. So thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. Take care.
Depends on how much you cheat. It depends on how often you cheat. It depends on what you cheat with. If you're going to be, eating carbohydrates and sugar, then obviously that's going to, just get you carb addicted. Again, you're going to screw your metabolism for at least 24 hours with the insulin spike. And you'll just feel kind of crappy. And it's easier to get back into that rut and just keep eating carbs, because you're going to eat carbs. It's going to give you a bump, and then you're going to feel like crap